Hello everyone, it's the storyteller here. I've prepared something slow, eerie, and sleep-friendly for you tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Are you drifting off already, or still wide awake? The request. Hear me, O Master, as we submit to your will for our meager and groveling desires. We beg and ask you to feel our souls as they bend and call to you, O Master, for your mercy and favor upon us now. We beg you to hear the thoughts of us all. Kevin, Robert, Dave with the beard, Dave without the beard, Steve and Stephen, Roger, and, yes, my little brother, Brian. We have brought ourselves to this place on this very cold and difficult day to ask you for your assistance, O Master. And please respond pretty quickly, because my brother is driving me crazy and the others don't have the nerve to actually ask for help. We seek your assistance to meet girls. Yes, my Master, we submit to you and hope to seek your favor to have the females of our neighborhood submit to our will. Don't tell anyone that the first one to have any success with girls has been my little brother, because that would work against us and our desires. Besides, it was only one time when he got a kiss from someone in his class on a dare. She really did not like him, but he keeps talking about it. Don't tell anyone. Yes, I have been asked by Kevin and Dave with the beard to say that they do have girlfriends, but they are unhappy females who will not go to first base with them until they are actually serious about what the relationship is all about. No information has been shared to explain what that may actually mean. I suggested a ring, but Dave without a beard and Steve and Stephen think that this might be going too far for... Oh, Master, I have been told not to use their names. Brian wants me to put it into my supplication, and that this is not relevant if we do have your favor in these matters. From our deep study of the material, we know that you do show your touch upon those who are willing and aware to sacrifice what we love to gain your respect. I still think it would make more sense to use our full names, but some people are too frightened of your power to be that willing. So, we will instead make our offerings to you. We have brought you the following as our sacrifice to you. My watch, given to me as a gift for my 16th birthday, and linked with the promise that this was one that my grandfather wore for many years and wanted me to have. I never wear it, but it is a potent sacrifice. Dave with the beard has offered you all of his comic books. He has been collecting them with Dave without a beard since he was merely a child. They are both willing to give it up now, and it has nothing to do with the information they have provided this evening about their move to a new place and their lack of space. They are also not related, although it seems sometimes that they could be brothers, despite the difference between hair color and attitudes toward life. I will continue. Kevin has a very nice guitar that he no longer plays, a Rickenbacker with 12 strings. I have offered to buy it from him at a reasonable rate. A discount should be considered, but he has chosen to carry it all this way and provide for you, O Master. Please accept his misguided offer. Seriously, I can play, and if he would just give me a chance, I could prove it. Steve and Stephen have. I must admit that they are family, not brothers, O Master, but cousins far removed from different parts of the family and living in the same neighborhood. Yes, it has caused some confusion among us, but also some amusement. Their offering, O Master, is to have a change of name. They have not yet decided which of them should make the sacrifice and have a new appellation, but they are making the inquiries needed to find out how it shall be done. I do not think this is the greatest sacrifice possible, but their minds are made up. I think. Robert has remained silent, O Master, and we are beginning to wonder if he is really into this. His appearance betrays an interest in sports more than obedience to you and your powerful essence. We have asked what he would like to contribute to achieve our wishes, all of our wishes, and he has made a sneer and tossed in a baseball into the ring. It is cold, so we know that this was a special ball that came at the end of the season, but I still feel that this is a grave insult. His response of "take it or leave it" is no reflection upon your majestic power, but please accept that this is coming solely from his arrogant soul and should be treated accordingly. Roger has brought his savings bonds. We told him that his sacrifice should not be so obvious, but he is adamant that they will mature soon, and that even those in your particular plane, O Master, should appreciate the money. So his offering is made, although I think that he may have other investments that are much more liquid that he is not willing to share with us. He just needs to trust us once. Finally, my little brother wants to sacrifice me. I feel that this would be quite pointless and silly. I also feel that I should inform our mother of this nonsense, but he has already threatened to expose our group to our parents, and I fear that I must allow him to do this. I would be honored to sacrifice myself, but I would like to be clear that this is done simply out of spite by him. The choice is yours. And seriously, O Master, don't listen to my little brother. He won't really appreciate all that can be offered to a lost soul. He's spoiled enough as it is. Here endeth our request. Witchetty Grub servings. 7. Preparation. Time varies based on resistance of ingredients. Ingredients. 1. Eye of newt. 1 toe of frog. 150 grams wool of bat. 1 tongue of dog. 10 scales of dragon. A pinch of dead man's blood. A drop of a virgin's tear. 1 swollen, pus-filled, witchetty grub for flavor. Preparation. A. Acquire pre-selected ingredients from their natural habitats. Successful extraction requires careful attention to prevent accidental damage. 1. Newt. Net the newt in a crumbling inner-city neighborhood. Still in his teens, the newt is most often found in the company of the local drug-dealing street gang he aspires to be part of. His watchful eyes make him a valuable resource. His fresh-faced appearance keeps him discreet. Optimal time to secure is while he keeps watch for the law and rival gang members outside a dilapidated apartment complex, casting furtive glances into alleys. His attention focused on the addicts and intimidating shadows that wander and lurk there. 2. Frog. Fetch the frog. At the edge of an abandoned industrial rooftop on the outskirts of the city. Her athleticism and powerful 20-something-year-old legs have made her a viral sensation, courtesy of elaborate, self-recorded parkour videos in which she scales buildings, leaps between rooftops, and climbs towering structures. The tattooed, shaven-head frog is at her most vulnerable while occupied with setting up her camera gear to record, having practiced her jumps, tested the winds, and psyched herself up for a stunt. 3. bat. Bag the bat in the darkness and privacy of her lavish bedroom, whilst she slumbers in the soothing shawl of night. Her golden locks, the envy of all at her Ivy League university, will be glowing around her head like a halo on a Hungarian goose-down pillow, while she dreams of fame and stardom as a singer. Take care to wrap the bat's hair neatly around her head 3 times before removing her from her covers and spiriting her away through the unlatched window of her family's Haven Heights home. 4. Dog. Drag the dog from the smoking hut at the rear of a downtown comedy hall, where he smokes alone after a rough set. An up-and-coming stand-up comedian, his wit and sharp tongue are capable of cutting down hecklers with cruel precision. With thick skin but flimsy material, the dog can be secured when the night sighs with disappointment. His smartest punchlines of the evening, the edgy, heckler-baiting insults fresh on his lips. Unalert, his mind preoccupied with feelings of inadequacy, he will prove easy to batter and snare. 5. Dragon. Extract the dragon from the dressing room of a seedy adult film studio, where she sits before a mirror, her reflection betraying the exhaustion in her eyes. Once a promising young woman, the dragon is trapped in the heartless world she was forced into by debt and destitution, performing for cameras and men. As she waits to be recalled to set, white powder residue under her nose, flawless skin glistening under harsh lights, she can be subdued with a chloroform-soaked rag. 6. Dead man and virgin. The dead man and the virgin can be obtained together from the dead man's car as it idles at the edge of a cliff overlooking the bay. The dead man will be fresh from a strenuous workout, basking in the admiration of the virgin, a pleasant distraction. The infatuated virgin, surprised to have secured a popular male's attention, is keen to impress for validation. His cockiness and her insecurity are the perfect combination of toxicity, making them vital ingredients for the pot. As the virgin is coerced to take things to the next stage, anesthetic gas introduced to the vehicle through its exhaust pipe will render them ripe for the picking. 7. Witchetty Grub. Remove from the stockpile in the larder, as previously instructed to prepare. B. Once acquired, transport ingredients to cellar and confine. Take care to label correctly. Wrong identification will result in incorrect ingredients introduced to the pot, spoiling the potency of the broth. C. Inflict sufficient emotional trauma over the course of 24 hours to ensure ingredients are primed. Fear and confusion should be present before proceeding. Screams, pleas for mercy, and despair are key to achieving optimal tenderness. Cooking instructions. Step 1. Eye of Newt. Prep. Approach the newt chained in a corner, his fearful blue irised eyes wide. His youthful terror and questioning of the rebellious attitude that led to him falling in with the wrong crowd when he could have stayed home with parents who offered love and tried to teach him right from wrong, will serve as a solid base flavor. Marinate. Let him feel the knife's serrated touch against his cheek, heightening his fear and emptying his bladder. Remain silent as you peer into his soul and exhale fetid breath onto his face. Smirk as you move the tip of the blade to the swollen, tear-infused bag beneath his left eye and start to shimmy it in. Allow the newt to scream as you pierce the eyeball, making your black, crooked teeth the last thing it sees. Harvest. Extract the eye swiftly, ensuring it stays moist. Sever the optic nerve with teeth and drop the excavated eyeball into the cauldron of bubbling broth, allowing its partner to watch from the head it remains housed in. Step 2. Toe of frog. Prep. Open the door to the cage of the naked frog, whose legs twitch as they struggle against their restraints. Her death-defying leaps and infinite recklessness have been reduced to paralysis and nervous kicks. This now caged force of once unstoppable urban adventure will add a tangy zest to the mix. Marinate. Trace a wart-covered finger along the side of a foot, then over each one of her toes, drawing out a series of gasps. Let her realize that no jump can save her as she shirks away. Grab the foot firmly and place the blade against its biggest toe, making it quiver and curl. Watch the frog's face contort and savor her cries as the knife digs deep into the skin. Harvest. Sever the toe at the joint. Allow it to twitch in your fingers as she cries in pain. Eyes locked on the almost insignificant but oh so important digit that aids with her balance. Drop the wriggling toe into the cauldron, letting its spasms add ripples to the broth. Step 3. 150 of wool of bat. Prep. Release the bat from her crate and comb out her lustrous locks, tangled and matted from confinement. The scent of confusion and fear for her life is sickly sweet, but the odor of her wounded pride outweighs it. Even in captivity, the bat's thoughts fixate on her unwashed hair, the long, golden strands that are the source of her appetizing appearance. Marinate. Run fingers through hair, untangling strands with care and soothing the bat with gentle shushes. Admire its luster. Appreciate its silky, smooth feel. Let your withered flesh tingle under its softness. Watch her grimace through tears, trying to coax out some mercy. Then grip a handful of hair and yank back her head. Lift the shears and slide their rusted edges either side of the strands, savoring the scream that slips forth with the snip. Harvest. Shear off 10 handfuls of finest silken hair and place on weighing scales until 150 grams of the bat's identity are harvested. Let her sob uncontrollably as she watches her beauty diminish, mourning the loss of her hair like the frog mourns her toe. Toss the locks into the cauldron and stir, imbuing the soup with a peppery nuance. Step 4. Tongue of dog. Prep. Leave the dog tied to his chair, blindfold in place, but remove the gag from his mouth. His trademark smirk will be absent, replaced with the babbling pleas that come from an understanding that no witty repartee can save him. Allow him to lick his dry lips one last time, moistening them with the mock-yielding lubrication that gives them their tartness. Marinate. Let the dog wield his words like weapons, shouting, cursing, trying to bargain with a devil. Stand quietly as he struggles against his restraints, powerless in the face of unyielding malice. When his adrenaline-fueled vitriol falters, take his chin in a vice-like grip and tug his tongue from his mouth. Slide the shears over the muscle and ease them together. Harvest. Slice through the tongue, severing it cleanly at the base. Watch crimson blood spurt forth, filling the dog's mouth and coating his chin. The ragged stump will quiver as he chokes, his sharp tongue reduced to a useless lump. Toss the fleshy piece into the broth, seasoning it with the sourness of insults. Step 5. 10 scales of dragon. Prep. Remove the hood from the head of the dragon, where she lies strapped to a metal gurney. Dark circles under her eyes mar her otherwise flawless skin and the exotic looks that brought her success. Her fingers tremble from the withdrawal, gnawing at her veins, while the makeup caked on her face fails to conceal the bitterness that came from a life she never wanted. Bitterness that will add complexity to the brew. Marinate. Stand behind the dragon and caress her cheeks, pressing into plump, pillowy skin. Feel her body freeze as your nails scratch the surface. Hear her breathing quicken as she wonders what new hell is about to unfold. No words will leave her lips, even when the razor is brought into view and left to hover over her nose. But the flicker of horror in her eyes will betray her terror. Bring the blade down and slice through her supple cheek like butter. Harvest. Carve 5 1/3 strips of skin from each cheek. as her flesh peels away. Suppressed screams will at last fill the cellar, and blood will soften the dried-up makeup on her face. Drop each strip into the cauldron, watching as they sink into the broth, the beauty that defined her, infusing the mixture with a savory depth. Step 6. A pinch of dead man's blood. Prep. Circle the dead man as he dangles from a meat hook, kicking and thrashing. This man, this bully, this self-obsessed, so-called alpha male who has spent his life stepping on others, viewing women as objects and treating people as conquests, will add an acrid taste to the blend, which, when balanced with the richness of the other ingredients, will create something truly sensational. Marinate. Lunge from the front, and use shears to cut his shirt from waist to neck. Expose chiseled abs and toned chest, then replace shears with dagger and start to stab. Apply slight pressure at first, tenderizing the flesh with shallow punctures, enough to extract delicate beads of blood. The dead man's bravado will crumble as the jabs become deeper. Wait for the realization that he cannot escape to appear in his eyes. Then draw the dagger back and plunge it with full force into his chest. Harvest. Guide the blade through ribs into the dead man's heart. Watch the fire in his eyes fade as his life-giving treacle spills out. With the dagger protruding from his chest, hold a tarnished teaspoon close to the wound. Wait for his last wheezing breath to rattle out, then catch a drop of syrup in the spoon, drizzling it into the cauldron to add pungency. Step 7. A drop of virgin's tear. Prep. Release the virgin from the cupboard under the stairs. Take her by the arm and drag her from the dark into the cellar. As her eyes adjust to the light, let her witness the gruesome sight of her dead boyfriend, hanging from a hook, blood beneath him. Marvel at the way in which she mourns him and howls in torment, her naivety and emotional dependency preventing her from seeing he is no loss, her saved innocence promising a nectarous punch. Marinate. Stand back and let the scene unfold. Listen to the virgin's cries grow louder. Watch her collapse onto the cold, hard floor and crawl away. Witness her growing terror as her eyes go from eyeless newt to toeless frog, from hairless bat to tongueless dog, from red-faced dragon to dangling dead man, again then to you. Approach slowly, sponge in hand, and digya at her tear-soaked cheeks. Harvest. Allow the sponge to be saturated with untainted tears, rich in sorrow. Then leave the virgin to curl up in a ball, covering her ears, squeezing her eyes shut, crying as she tries to deny reality. Carefully squeeze the sponge out over the cauldron, letting her essence and purity drip into the broth, enriching it with subtle, candied sweetness. Step 8. Witchetty Grub. Drop the Witchetty Grub into the pot as a final garnish. Stir 6 times. Cover, then leave to ferment. Serving. Decant the concoction into a jar. Screw on a rubber teat, sealing in its rich, aromatic flavor. Suck a single drop into your mouth. Feel your body shudder as the magic flows through it, transforming your hair and your skin, restoring your youth. Indulge a fit of cackling, your voice echoing through the chamber. Then offer a word of gratitude as you depart. Optional flourish. Before leaving, kiss a spell-cast crystal and roll it to the center of the floor. In time, when the ingredients feel brave enough to assist one another, they will turn their traumatized gaze upon it, each seeing in it the future they have been spared. The newt, murdered by his gang after failing as a lookout during a hit. The frog, falling to her death as a result of an overly ambitious jump. The bat, caught in a house fire, her hair igniting to prevent her escape. The dog, stabbed by a heckler after an insult goes too far. The dragon, overdosing to escape the life her looks keep her trapped in. The virgin, dying at the hands of the abusive dead man. Extract from Witchetty Grub, Edition 7. Recipes for preservation. Broths using humane ingredients and ethical processing methods. Past Imperfect W. Mentions of mental and physical abuse. Bill sat bolt upright in the hotel bed, heart pounding to a familiar refrain. The dream had reasserted itself with a vengeance from the moment he'd seen the updated list of people attending the conference. One name had stood out. Dake Scratchard was the name of the boy who'd haunted Bill Brown's life more years than he cared to remember. Dreams fueled by past memories disturbed his nights when equal amounts of dread and fear surged through his veins, rendering him helpless. As always, the nightmare was a variation on a theme. In it, Bill was a teenage boy running from the gang. He often came close to evading capture, but at the last minute tripped over his shoelaces or some other encumbrance. Then he found himself falling flat on his face outside the old school toilets, the inner doors of which rose up like whited sepulchres. Up close, he could see every cell of his tormentor's face. Ginger needs to be taught a lesson, came out of that hate-filled mouth. A bully, aided by his contemptible band of followers, with their menacing chants of Ginger, Ginger, Ginger. Even now, their words filled the corridors of his mind like a background hiss. No! The sound seemed to come from somewhere outside, as if it belonged to someone else. Not him. You're just begging for it, Billy Ginger. If the teachers won't correct you, we must do it for them. Billy knew no teacher would come. They were never there when you needed them. In any case, the gang always had some lackey watching out. Soon they'd have him crawling on his hands and knees, scooting about like an insect, while they kicked him on the hard stone floor. Their mocking jeers running through him. He was nothing more than a piece of meat to be hauled about. For them, the high point was shoving his face into the toilet bowl. The stench was the least of it. Clinging for support, he tried to keep everything tight shut while they flushed. Knowing he could not hold out for long, he spluttered to be let go. Then, just as he was about to give up, a final flush signaled his release. He was pulled up, squirming like a rat from a sewer, and left heaving on the floor. For a few minutes, he lay there curled and defenseless, all resistance gone, until the next time, and the time after that. Something so primal, so feral. He could smell it now. Even after all this time, he was defined by it, as if the abuse had become part of a warped pattern of D and A, making him only half human. But somehow, he'd known he was worth more than that. At least his dog seemed to think so. Through it all, the only thing that kept Bill going was the thought of the black Labrador faithfully waiting in the porch. Back home, Kelpie licked away the wounds and salt tears, stayed beside him till the pain subsided. Without Kelpie, he would not have survived, for the purity of a dog's heart knows no bounds. Switching on the bedside lamp, Bill waited until his breathing steadied. Coughing, he climbed into a dressing gown and stepped out onto a small balcony. In the courtyard below, the air was prescient with a damp chill. A few lone trees were scattering leaves marking the onset of winter. Inhaling a sneaky cigarette, Bill considered his options. It had all happened so long ago, yet the dream had reignited the past, making him feel he could never escape its clutches. If Bill recited the facts of his life enough times, he almost convinced himself of their worth. On paper, he'd worked hard, got married and divorced, and had a son he barely saw. He'd mostly married his wife to please his father because she came from a better background, and look where that had got him. It wasn't his ex's fault if along the way he'd supplemented whatever was missing with a few women he was physically attracted to, but not much else. In the end, it had been like ships passing in the night, all except for Bella. With her, he'd come close to casting a loveless marriage aside. But in the end, something had stopped him. The risk of getting it wrong had been too great, but all that was in the past. Although Bella had recently returned to the company where they both worked, albeit in a less demanding role, he rarely saw her these days. And according to rumors, She was now with someone in the shower. Bill imagined washing the past down the plug hole. Soon he planned to do just that. The only fly in the ointment, of course, was Bella. He wasn't sure whether she'd be attending the conference. Really, bumping into her was the least of his worries. But if he did, so be it. He hadn't actually seen her name on the list of attendees, so it seemed unlikely. Overall, it would be easier if she didn't attend, because that afternoon, Bill was making his first big speech in his new role as Regional Operations Manager. As if there wasn't enough going on without having to deal with affairs of the heart. The speech, eagerly anticipated, was expected to be the highlight of the day. In the hotel room, examining the set of knives his father had given him as an 18th birthday present, Bill was confronted by powerful emotions. Before him were a dazzling array of sharp pieces, all with wooden handles for an extra firm grip. It was almost pleasurable selecting the one with the pointed end. He carefully placed it in a sheath and adding it to a concealed section of his briefcase. In the mirror, he observed hair that was thinning a little at the sides. Other than that, it was still thick and brown, with just a hint of chestnut. Impressive in a well-cut suit, he was tall enough to be considered distinguished. To some, his features might be regarded as handsome. His eyes, however, were preternaturally bright. Sighing deeply, he exited the room. Clutching his laptop and briefcase, he made his way along the plushly carpeted corridor, entered the lift, and headed the 3 floors down to the conference room area. Psyching himself up for whatever lay ahead, he focused on his achievements. Only by drawing on every retail milestone was he able to make sense of the wasteland that was his emotional life. His mind's eye framed the certificates that took pride of place on his home office wall, charting his journey from sales assistant to the coveted role of Regional Operations Manager for one of the country's most successful chain stores. Stores that sold fashionable clothes and accessories for prices most people could afford. Bill's journey into a better life had only really begun when his parents had moved from a London suburb to a city in the Midlands. Then aged 15, he'd welcomed the move with open arms, for it had given him a chance to start afresh in a place where no one knew him, especially at school. He had loved walking unrecognized through the city's streets and visiting its ancient cathedral. One Saturday morning, plucking up courage, he'd walked into one of the city's department stores and landed himself a Saturday job in the menswear department. When he returned home, his mum made him a cup of tea, and Kelpie wagged a warm greeting. You could do a lot worse. They've got people queuing up to get a place in that store, his mum had commented. Then, examining him more closely, she observed, "You've darkened your hair. Isn't that what Elvis Presley did?" "I expect so. I never liked my natural color, and I want to fit in at this school. That was the closest he'd come to admitting the bullying at his old school. He never told anyone about the suicidal thoughts. Chazo, he couldn't miss her. Bella was a figure of light breaking the conference room formality and wearing the most distinctive outfit. To him, she was the classiest person there, surrounded as she was by an adoring team of managers at one of the middle tables. Distracted by her presence, he could hardly wait for a chance to speak to her. The chance came while she was lining up to choose from a tray of canapes during the lunch break. I wasn't expecting you to be here, Bella, he said. I wasn't expecting to be here, but there was a change of plan. It's so good to see you. He found himself saying, well, I missed the company and the people. I wasn't the right fit for the new position, even if it was a promotion. It seemed fortuitous when my old vacancy came up again. So, you didn't have a problem with going back to your old role? There's no need to avoid using the word demotion. I won't be offended, she laughed. I came to realize I didn't need all the hassle that goes with a high-powered job. I realized I'd made a mistake, and the opportunity came to rectify it. I want a simple life, especially now I'm single. Don't worry, it's all worked out for the best. He wasn't right for me either. Bill could hardly believe what he was hearing. It's really good to see you, he said again. I'm glad you think that, she said, smiling brightly. Catching up with Bella had been great. So much so, watching her sleeping the next morning, Bill had almost forgotten about the other thing. He decided he'd know what to do when the time came. If it came, Bill was pouring coffee when Bella opened her eyes. They were warm, like kelpies had once been. That smells good, she said. I remembered you like it's strong. The world outside remained foggy and damp. But for the moment, none of that mattered. Fully dressed, Bill joined Bella on the bed. What's the matter? You look like you've got the world on your shoulders, she said kindly. Nothing. Just the conference. A lot to think about. But that was only partly true. If only he could tell her what was really on his mind. Part of him wondered whether meeting Bella again was purely coincidental, or a sign he should let the past go, once and for all. He might have said more, but then the phone rang. Good luck with the speech. Not that you're going to need it, Bella said, getting up and kissing him. Dad. On the way to the conference room, Bill overheard a conversation between two hotel staff members. Are the cameras still out? Only on the 3rd floor. Also, the ones by the bathroom. They're down, too. Okay, not good. How long before they are fixed? A few hours at most. Maintenance will get it sorted. It won't affect the general running of things. Bill felt almost disappointed to hear the news about the cameras. After his night with Bella, he'd been on the verge of scrapping his original plan. Now fate seemed to be pulling him back. Yet he still hadn't come across his nemesis. Chatting. About 40 minutes into the second day of conference, a man best described as nondescript entered the hall. Head down, he weaved his way to the numbered seat. Bill clocked him, and his heart sank. Something of the man's stance reminded him of Dake Scratchard grown older. But was it him? He couldn't be sure. 2 hours into the conference, during the talk on sustainability, the man scurried towards one of the exits, and all doubt vanished. Shriveled he might be, but it was definitely Scratchard, galvanized into action. Bill left his seat and headed for the nearest exit. Gripping his case so tightly his fingers hurt, he followed the figure until he disappeared into the bathroom. Unless he had to, Bill generally avoided public bathrooms. But this was going to be the exception. Adrenaline flooding through him, he quietly opened the door and stepped inside. Other than a pulsing through his ears and the sound of a dripping tap, all was quiet. Then he heard a retching coming from one of the cubicles. A minute later, the door opened and Scratchard stepped out. Engrossed in his own suffering, he ran to the nearest sink and stood there heaving, watching unobserved. Bill was torn between revulsion and an intense hatred. Mostly, he was seized by a hatred for all he'd been put through, overcome by a rage for the way this pathetic being had ruined so much of his life. It was too late to change his mind now. The die was cast. Gripping the knife, he advanced, his anger rising to a peak. Suddenly, the bathroom door sprang open, and to his astonishment, Bella entered. She came and stood behind him, putting her arms round his waist. Then, opening his fist, she carefully removed the knife from his hand and put it behind her back. "It's not the answer," she whispered, hurriedly placing it in her bag. It all seemed to happen in slow motion. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Startled out of his sickness, Bill's childhood enemy locked eyes with his victim in the mirror. Both men were shaking, one from the effects of illness, the other from the horror of what might have been. "What the hell?" Scratchard broke out. Then there was a flash of recognition as the years fell back. "Surely not. I wasn't sure if it was you in the meeting. Probably because your hair is different. But it's Ginger Bill, isn't it? Only the last time I saw you." The words trailed off, vanished into the unknown. "But you never did see me," Bill said through gritted teeth. "All you saw was a weak boy you could bully because of his hair color. As I recall, the last time I saw you and your sick gang, you'd forced my head down the bog. Have you any idea what that does to someone? Did I do that?" Dake's face reddened. "I was a bit of a jerk in those days. If it's any consolation, life hasn't exactly treated me well. As you can see, I'm not a well man." The edges blurring, Bill felt the first stirrings of pity. "What's actually wrong with you, Scratchard?" Calling him by his surname felt like a minor victory. He'd never dared call him anything in school. Dake shook his head despairingly. "If it's not one thing, it's another these days. I had heart trouble a few years ago, and now this. I keep having to running to the toilet and have a raging thirst. You need medical attention, Bella said unexpectedly. You're showing all the signs of severe diabetes. My father got like that before he was diagnosed. 10 minutes later, Bill was sitting with his childhood tormentor in the lobby, waiting for assistance. I'm sorry for making your school life hard, Dake muttered, unable to meet Bill's eyes. It was worse than that. You bullied me to the point I didn't feel life was worth living. Why did you? I need to know, Bill demanded. Dake searched what remained of his soul for answers. I don't know, he admitted at last. Maybe it made me feel more in control. Life was miserable at home, and at school, I was somebody in front of the other kids. The rest of the day passed in a blur. But Bill somehow found the strength to get through his talk. He got a good reception at the end, and he couldn't help noticing Bella was clapping the hardest. What made you come into the bathroom like that? He asked her much later. I couldn't believe it when I saw you there. You kept saying his name in your sleep, saying you're dead over and over. I haven't forgotten the nightmares you had when we were together before. Imagine what would have happened if you hadn't appeared, Bella. It doesn't bear thinking about, she said. If you want us to make a go of this, you've got to promise me you're going to get help. The past will always get in the way if you don't. It turned out to be an easy promise to keep. More than a year after that fateful encounter, the terrible dreams are a thing of the past. Though his old enemy is hardly on Bill's Christmas card list, he no longer regards him as a threat. Now Bill dreams of walking through the park with Bella, taking it in turns to throw a ball for their new dog. Somehow, he feels very close to achieving it. Dig deep. Other than a faint glow coming from one of the back rooms, the town's charity shop was in darkness, its front door firmly closed. Although it had opened in 1985, the building had been used commercially since the 1800s, when it had variously been a pharmacy, a bank, and a tavern. The shop was close to the river in Marpleton, a pleasant English market town which had once been home to a nearby priory. In ancient times, monks had wandered back and forth to sell their wares at a market which still existed in diminished form across the road. Regulars were now peering through the shop window, but the main lights stayed off. A few of the shop's helpers were huddled in the back room. Patrick, the treasurer, had collected the spare keys from the greengrocer to let them in. The gatherers were addressing one topic, namely, why their long-serving manager, Rhea, had failed to open up the day before. I just can't understand it, Ivy, one of the shop's founding members, said. I've never known her not to turn up, unless she's on holiday. In all the years I've known Rhea, she's never had a day's sickness. Wasn't she going to New Zealand to visit her sister? Patrick asked. She was, but not until the following week. It's in the shop diary. Here, take a look. Ivy tapped the relevant pages meaningfully. I'm not doubting you, Ivy, but she may have got the dates wrong. She wasn't in the habit of making mistakes. Ivy's loyalty knew no bounds. Patrick adopted a different approach. You've tried Ria's landline, I take it, several times. Each time, it went straight to answer phone. Right. Still, I expect we're worrying over nothing. But you have to admit, she has been a bit distracted lately, someone piped up. Patrick turned to Silvana hopefully, but she shook her head. I've tried her on her mobile, but nothing. Silvana was a refugee who had joined the shop 2 years earlier. Since Ria had taken her under her wing when she first came to England, her English had improved markedly. Silvana had been on the verge of admitting her true feelings for Ria. Reality had crushed the likelihood of her returning to her homeland anytime soon, and been replaced by something entirely unexpected. An overwhelming love for another human being. Silvana's great wish was to know whether that love was returned. Ria clearly liked her, but was it worth risking their friendship for more? The path to such an admission seemed littered with obstacles. Now, the mystery of Ria's whereabouts could be added to an already growing list. Did Ria say anything about changing her holiday plans, Silvana? Patrick asked, determined to get to the bottom of things. No, I went to her house for my lesson last Wednesday. She told me she'd be away all next week. Silvana had considered the matter carefully. Yes, that is so. Patrick said. I guess I'll have to contact the area manager about reopening the shop. You'll need to do that. Volunteer phone numbers are stored in the locked cabinet, and only Ria has the key, Ivy interjected. Head office have contact numbers too. Everyone knew Ria always carried a set of keys on a fob attached to a waistband. Patrick joked she secretly had a cellar key for the shop's more trying customers, to which he'd received an enigmatic smile. The actual cellar key had supposedly vanished in the mists of time. Certainly, there was no call to use the cellar with ample storage space elsewhere. In any case, the cellar door was kept permanently locked, preventing anyone getting trapped if there was a fire. Patrick scrutinized the rota sheets. Maybe Judd would be willing to help if we reopen the shop, he suggested. Silvana, who distrusted Judd, said nothing. 3 months earlier, dressed in black jeans and hoodie, and trailed by a mournful cocker spaniel, Judd had shown up to inquire about volunteering. When Silvana had bent to pat his dog, it had backed off, whimpering. She gets nervous round new people, Judd had explained. Tucking away the banking money, Patrick had gone to fetch Ria. A young man's inquiring about volunteering, he'd told her. Shall I send him through? What's he like? Ria was wearily tapping information into the computer at her desk. He seems pleasant enough. His dog's rather nervous. Ria massaged her aching neck. Send him through, she said. Ria had confided in Silvana about her difficulty in getting references for Judd Dig Deep. Eventually, he'd presented her with 2 typed ones, supposedly from an ex-employer. With typical thoroughness, Ria had rung one of the numbers to learn more about the new helper. When a voice answered, sounding suspiciously like Judd's, she'd intended to investigate further. However, other things had intervened. A few weeks after this uncharacteristic omission, Judd was indeed proving to be an asset. Willing to turn his hand to anything, it was a relief not having to lift heavy sacks and boxes donated by the public from one end of the shop to the other. With little guidance, Judd had transformed one of the sorting rooms, leaving it immaculate. One evening, when Silvana cycled past the back of the shop, she noticed a group of undesirables hanging with Judd, engrossed in conversation. She hurried past, hoping she hadn't been seen. She raised her concerns to Rhea, who told her it was nothing to worry about, that she'd keep an eye on things, and bafflingly added, "I'd rather you didn't mention this to anyone else." The day the shop reopened, without Rhea at the helm, was Silvana's birthday. Patrick invited her to join him later for one of his wife's specials, homemade pizza and pear wine. The food tasted delicious, but she pushed her plate to one side. "You're still worried about Rhea, aren't you?" Patrick observed. "Her cell phone is dead. It's strange. I knocked on her door last night, but still no answer." Patrick got up. "I tell you what, I happen to know Rhea's neighbor, Angela, from the book club. She looks after the garden when Rhea goes away. She may well have a spare key. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, but it wouldn't do any harm to check if everything is all right." Silvana was relieved. "That's a great idea. Thanks, Patrick. I've been known to have a few in my time. Come on, get your coat. Let's see if we can solve this mystery." Half an hour later, the pair were standing in Rhea's house. The hallway led into an open-plan kitchen diner with gleaming countertops and state-of-the-art gadgets. The smell of coffee lingered invitingly. When Rhea's partner, Lindsay, had died 5 years earlier, she'd left her with a generous insurance payout. Silvana sighed, remembering the other day when she and Rhea had drawn close over a bottle of wine. Rhea had even given her a present, only to be opened on your birthday, she instructed. But beneath the gaiety, she'd been out of sorts. Rhea had brushed aside Silvana's offer of help with a brisk, "I'm fine. I'll check down here if you do upstairs," Patrick said, jolting Silvana back to the present. The passport was lying on the bedside table. However, the photograph bore little resemblance to the person Silvana had come to love and admire. Having spent time working for a private detective agency when she was younger, instinct overrode caution, and she began a meticulous search for clues. Predictably, Rhea's shop keys were lying on the bedside table. More unexpected was the discovery of another set of keys attached to a ring with a tag labeled "Cellar." "Are you all right?" Patrick called up from the bottom of the staircase. "I'm okay." Silvana tucked the cellar keys into her bag. Then she remembered Rhea's present and opened it. She was surprised to find a pay-as-you-go phone, already charged up. "Well," Patrick exclaimed, "did you find anything?" Just this. She gave him the passport. That's odd. It appears she never made it to New Zealand after all. Maybe it's time to involve the police. What? Right now? It is rather late. I doubt they'll want to be disturbed tonight. Patrick thought of the half-opened bottle of wine waiting back home. I'll act tomorrow morning. Shall I walk you back? No need. I can take care of myself, Silvana said firmly. Casa. The moon was her only companion as Silvana descended the cellar steps at the back of the shop. With growing unease, she encased her hands in a pair of gloves and took off her shoes. She didn't want anyone to know of her presence. After 3 attempts, the door creaked open, and she was met by a cloying damp, overlaid by something else, something unpleasant. Tensing, she flicked on her phone torch and spotted a narrow corridor with another door at the end. Filled with foreboding, she slowly turned the handle. She smelt the body before she saw it. Wearing the trademark hoodie, the bloating, discolored thing in front of her, could hardly be called human. Judd lay slumped against an upturned table, his eyes staring and opaque. Silvana covered her face with a handkerchief to prevent retching and inspected the scene, noting the bloodied head and smashed vase lying beside it. The blood had pooled and dried, staining the clothes and floor. She was no expert, but if the rotting undertones were anything to go by, death had probably occurred a few days earlier. Even then, horror was blunted by relief. So long as it wasn't Rhea, she had the strength for anything. But where was Rhea? Adjusting to the dimness, Silvana tried to make sense of her surroundings. Some crudely constructed shelves, filled with storage tubs and packets, lay stacked against one of the walls. The place was obviously some kind of drugs den. Could Judd's death have been the result of a disagreement with other gang members? Silvana's stomach lurched. What if they turned up and found her? She'd only just locked the cellar door and picked up her shoes when she heard voices on the driveway. Somehow, she managed to scramble behind one of the bins underneath the fire escape. Hardly daring to breathe, she waited until the scuffling feet passed, and the gang disappeared down the cellar steps. Then, she bolted into the night as fast as her trembling legs would carry her. She would decide what to do when she got home. So, halfway across the town's park, muffled ringtones came from her bag. Silvana? The voice was clear as day at the other end of the line. Rhea, is it really you? Thank God. Are you all right? Where are you calling from? Talk to me. If I tell you, you must keep it to yourself, Rhea said urgently. Of course. By the way, I have your keys. The shop keys? The cellar keys. Long story. I have just been down there. I found him. Judd. Dead. It was horrible. Silvana began to laugh hysterically as the shock kicked in. You went into the cellar? Rhea repeated. Why? I needed to know if you were all right. I was so afraid. I was going to find you, not him. When I saw your passport, I knew you couldn't have gone abroad, that something must have happened. I didn't get the chance. What happened? I will tell you, but not now. Not on the phone. Patrick is planning to go to the police tomorrow about your passport, Ria asked. Did you touch anything when you went into the cellar? Did you touch him? No. Silvana's teeth were chattering from shock. It's cold outside. I was wearing gloves. But what do you know about Judd? Why were you wearing gloves? I don't know. I had a bad feeling. I didn't want to be implicated in anything. Back home, I once worked at a detective agency. I learned about not touching crime scenes. You may want to call the police, Ria said. But please, can I ask you not to tell them I got in contact? Or about me giving you the phone? We'll meet soon. That is, if you want to. I'll understand if you don't want anything more to do with me. Of course I want to meet you. It seemed silly pretending now. It's all I think about. Ciao. Silvana's heart flipped when she saw the distant figure standing on the pier below. The matinee performance at the Pavilion Theater was in full swing, and the pier was almost deserted. She came up behind Ria, patting her on the shoulder. Hey, Ria turned, instantly relaxing when she saw her friend. Hey. Silvana sank into Ria's arms. For a long time, the pair embraced. It's so good to see you, Silvana said. Likewise. Ria glanced round. Does anyone know you're here? No. And I'm so hungry. Ria grinned. How about some fish and chips? I'll treat you. You mean the famous English fish and chips? Ria grinned. I've discovered a great place on the front. She linked arms with Silvana. Come on, let's eat. Then I'll tell you everything. Ciao. Judd was a bad lot, Ria admitted later. He was running a drug racket, and I threatened to report him to the police. It doesn't surprise me. But how did you find out? Not long after I joined the shop, I was clearing up one of the back rooms and came across a discarded cabinet. There were 2 sets of cellar keys in it. I never told anyone about them, partly because I didn't want a lot of fuss. I wanted to keep it to myself. Unfortunately, Judd caught me coming up the stairs one evening and demanded to store his things there. I didn't like the way he spoke to me. When I refused, he threatened to torture his dog in front of me. He implied if I didn't comply, I'd be next. His eyes were so cold. For the second time in my life, I felt real fear. There would be time enough to ask about the first time, Silvana thought, clasping Ria's hand. I'm afraid there's more, Ria said dully. You probably won't want anything to do with me when you hear the rest. Silvana clutched Ria's hand more tightly. She'd come too far to be brushed aside. Why don't you let me be the judge of that? She said firmly. Whatever it is, we'll bear it together. You see, I love you. I need you to know that. You do? For a moment, Ria's face shone. That's a relief, she said, laughing. I thought it was just me. Did you? Silvana laughed too. I may have had my suspicions, but I didn't want to say anything. Oh, I'm so happy, Silvana said. But hold your horses before we get carried away. Rhea warned. Hold my horses? An English expression. It means don't count your chickens. Count my chickens? Sylvana, my love, let me finish my story before you say anything. Okay, sorry. Sylvana nibbled a stray chip. Rhea was smiling in spite of everything. In the end, I couldn't stand being held to ransom by a bully like Judd. A few days ago, I foolishly decided to confront him in the cellar. He went to grab a knife from the table. There was an old jar on one of the shelves, and as he turned, I smashed it over his head. She shuddered. I couldn't tell you all this, but I made sure you had the phone before I left. I hoped you'd stay in touch. The day after, I headed here. Not wanting to be traced, I paid for everything with cash. But surely the police will realize you only acted in self-defense, Sylvana insisted. Perhaps I should have gone to them straight away, but I couldn't face it. Rhea's hesitation was palpable, especially considering what? In spite of the warmth between them, Sylvana felt a sudden chill, like someone walking over a grave. What aren't you telling me? Rhea's voice broke. I'm terminally ill. At best, I only have months to live. At worst, it will be weeks. I have all the medication I need. I just want to spend my last days in a place with happy memories. I can't believe it. But Sylvana knew Rhea was speaking the truth. She tried to disguise her anguish. How long have you known? She whispered. I only found out for certain the day before Judd threatened me in the cellar. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. I should have told the police everything long before, but by then, I was in too deep. I'm going to stay with you. Sylvana had never been more certain of anything. Rhea shook her head. Stay with me tonight, and go back tomorrow. It won't be long before the police check the cellar. It will look odd if you're not there. I have every faith in your survival skills. Look how far you've come. In the meantime, there's something I want you to have. What is it? Rhea handed Sylvana 2 envelopes. Inside one is a plan of the cellar. After years of searching, I think I may have finally uncovered the sealed entrance to a tunnel leading to the old priory. My father was a historian and suspected there might be one near the shop. The other is a copy of my will. It's my final and dearest wish to make your life better when I've gone. Oh, Muse. Oh, Catharsis. My legs were on fire by the time they left the ground. I surged upward like a spark, stretching my arms toward the ceiling, grabbing, reaching. I landed hard on my calloused soles. Once more, then, I leapt, gaining height. The third jump took me higher still, and as I returned to the floor, catching sight of myself in the mirror, I rolled my whole body downward. I found a strange foundation there in the scuffed surface, and I allowed this discovery to take root in the depths of my stomach. It tugged me to the ground like a magnet, providing momentum as I sank. I felt my whole body contort with it, bending in half, caught, flailing like a moth in a web. "Stop! Stop!" His voice echoed sharply off the white walls, the beating of a mighty drum. It startled me out of my panting half-trance, and Louisa, the stage manager, a severe, spectacled woman in a beige blouse, reached out a hand to pause the tape player. The music, that music, driving, discordant, utterly electric, screeched to an abrupt halt. There was silence. Tugging down my shirt, I averted my gaze from the mirror and extended one leg, gently trying to loosen my muscles. But booming in that same voice, the voice of the giant that he was, he rose from his chair and began to circle me like a desert bird. "You're dragging, Hector," he said. "You're descending into the earth too slowly, you understand? You lack impetus." His words rattled his throat as though it were an iron cage. "The dance is precise. That is the challenge of it, yes? It looks wild. It feels wild when you are in it, I know, but it is precise. It is specific. Every motion has intention. 1, 2, 3. He slammed his foot with each word, punctuating them with the thump, thump, thump of his shoe. He rocked his pelvis down, trying to mime for me what exactly I was ruining. And while he could no longer exert himself the way he could in his youth, I saw the whisper of strength in his limbs, the dancer, the echo of the titan he once and still was. At that moment, I hated myself for dancing badly. Really, the only thing worse than dancing badly is knowing that you are dancing badly, that others can tell you are dancing badly. I never imagined I would dance badly before Dimitri Lamoureux. I never imagined I would be dancing this piece before Dimitri Lamoureux, choreographer, director, writer, living legend. He had, in his prime, created 6 variations of what he called human dramas with music. Not quite musicals, but real, honest-to-God works of art. And in my mind, they still towered over the blockbusters dominating Broadway at the time. Louisa, his longtime collaborator, had worked on every premiere and some revivals, such as this one. Lucky her. Lamoureux had practically invented a new language of movement, a language which would inspire crude imitation after crude imitation. Yet, nothing compared. He had flown close to some secret glory, some cosmic thing that no other artist had ever even glimpsed. He was Icarus, never fallen, and I was just me, stupid, out-of-work me. Through dumb luck, I never believed they really liked me in that singing prescription pill commercial. I would actually get to perform No Place, the No Place, that seminal solo dance from Human Drama with Music No. 1, Catharsis, It was not quite a featured 20-minute dream ballet. No. In fact, it had been described by at least one critic as a night terror. Primal, cerebral, something that burrowed into a person's head. It was a career maker, though. The role of the dancer had no dialogue, and sure, it spent most of the show backstage. I hadn't even rehearsed with the rest of the cast yet, but if I could step out and command the room for just 6 minutes and 18 seconds, I would get to do this, and nothing but this forever, until my body gave out. And I wanted that more than anything. I saw a grainy recording of No Place on PBS as a child. Flipping through the channels in that little apartment, my knees digging into the living room carpet, I paused as a lone figure emerged onto a darkened stage. Dressed in gray fabric, hunched in a solitary white spotlight, his body heaved with bracing breaths, ignited by a swell of wind and the crash of drums. He spun in a circle before bending backward completely, with a flexibility I could only hope to one day possess. With each movement, though, with each count, I found myself drawing closer and closer until I was practically pressed flush against the screen, near enough that I could feel the cold static pricking the skin of my face. Poised like that, I extended both my arms outward and began crudely mirroring the dancer's steps. Back up, Hector. How many times do I gotta tell you? You're gonna burn your goddamn eyes out, my father growled. Coming up behind me, he ripped the remote from my hands and changed the channel. He barked at me for blocking the picture, but I had already seen the dance. I had seen it, and having seen it, I craved it, like I had tasted blood. And from that day forward, I devoured TV listings whenever I found them, flipped through magazines in grocery stores, or turned on the guide channel to let it roll. Blue in the static dark, searching, hoping it would appear again. I had asked my mother for lessons once, I remember, but she never really gave me an answer. I think she hoped I would simply forget. Not because she didn't want me to have them, no, but because he wouldn't have wanted me to. I had overheard one morning a suggestion that he would smash my toes if he caught me standing on them, like a ballerina. I figured she had broached the subject. Either way, they aired the recording of Catharsis again in the autumn, very late at night, long past the hour I would be in bed, or sensible people would be watching. But I had planned for it. For weeks, I had been saving wherever I could. Change from lunch, or from errands to the corner store. Standing in the doorway to my bedroom, one eye on the alarm clock, I, knowing I couldn't be late, clutched the blank VHS tape to my chest. I had scrounged up just enough to buy it for this singular, solemn purpose. I had made this walk many, many times. The long corridor past my parents' bedroom to the living room. And I knew, by then, that I had to take the trek in threes, extending my legs every third step to avoid the spots where the floor creaked. I listened to my father's snoring, holding my breath as I moved, 3 by 3, avoiding the noise, avoiding the discovery, only to take off running as soon as I felt carpet. Hurrying to the television, I muted it with the remote before shoving the tape into the VCR. And as soon as I was sure that little red light was blinking, I watched. Yeah, I watched. And I mirrored the silent movements as if compelled, as if called. And while I didn't learn to dance for real until high school, when I could spend more time outside the house, I did dance for real that night. I hid the tape in a corner of my closet and snuck it out again and again, whenever the opportunity arose, until it broke and I couldn't even rewind it anymore. I'm sorry. I'm in my head. I can do it, I said at last, speaking to Lamoureux in the mirror of the rehearsal room. I shifted my eyes to the floor, but he pulled up my chin, forcing me to look at myself. I know you can, Hector. We saw it in your audition. Do that. Shall we run the section again? Louisa asked. Her finger hovered over the tape player. No. I'm tired of sections. We've been doing nothing but sections. Let's weave them together now. He needs to feel the full scope. Yes? He locked eyes with my reflection. You can do the full piece? From the top? I nodded, because I did not know what else to do. And I realized in that moment that, more than anything, I wanted to impress him. I didn't want him to regret entrusting me, of all the dancers in the world, with this most sacred thing. And so I lapsed into my pre-routine. Walking in a circle, the wood cold beneath my feet, I counted my steps in threes, stretching my legs at every third, out of habit or tradition or superstition. I rolled my hands downward next, running my pointer finger along each of my toes, counting out all 10 before taking my place before the mirror. Lamoureux settled back in his chair with a grunt, and turning to Louisa, I gave a nod. She pressed a few buttons, and with a low analog whir, the music began. I exhaled, my whole chest heaving, and counting to myself, I began. Turning, whirling, writhing, I bent myself backward, stretching my entire torso. Lamoureux, too, began keeping time, stomping away with his foot, watching every movement I made, driving me forward, taking hold of the energy I was hurling out into the space. Thump, 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 thump. Each beat seeped into me, filling the pores of my thrashing body and setting my muscles ablaze. I blinked, and at first, I was not even sure I had seen it. It began as something of a flicker of light, a vague shadow over my left shoulder, almost a smudge on the mirror. The music hastened, and Lamoureux thumped time. And as if keeping up with it, the thing in the glass moved. I spun too, and it seemed to spin with me. But locked into the dance, I did not stop to look. No, I spun. And I spun lost completely. And with each turn, the shape seemed to take more solid form, until I, facing the mirror, panting, aching, could see it, really see it. Skeletal limbs, impossibly long, arachnid almost, pulsed with tendons and throbbing red veins. It swayed back and forth, collapsing and contorting in on itself, creating and uncreating, almost imitating my movement, but stretching them to the mocking brink. It was a figure, a rotting husk, forged as if from teeth and flesh and living darkness. It moved in a way nothing I had ever seen moved. Choreographed chaos. A star imploding in on itself. A jellyfish. And yet, a man bending completely in half, twitching. It flipped its torso upside down, and its swollen head smacked the floor with a sickening, wet crunch. Somewhere beneath the thumping, I thought I could hear a raw, splintering noise, one that could burrow into a person's skull, digging like claws through grave dirt. Its spine had shattered, I thought. It had snapped itself in half, and yet continued to move. Beneath the music, I could hear the sick, screeching grind of bone on bone. Thump, thump, thump. I leapt, then just as I had leapt before, unable to stop. I stretched my arms upward, once, twice, 3 times. The thing leapt with me, limbs flailing, fingers breaking, twisting and cracking as it furled them toward the ceiling. I cried out, landing hard on the floor, traveling too far in the final leap, plummeting askew. The illusion broke. I rolled upward, legs burning, trying to catch my breath. I almost thought I would vomit. And when I looked, there was nothing in the mirror. Oh, why don't we take a break? Louisa was the one to crack the strange stillness that settled over us. Her voice firm as she stood from her chair and pierced the catacomb that the rehearsal room had become. Step into the hallway, Hector. Are you all right? Do you need me to file an injury report? Why don't you get some water? I was working too hard, I thought, as I slumped against the wall in the corridor. Closing my eyes, I took a long swig from my bottle, using the back of my hand to wipe away the layer of sweat that now drenched my brow. The shape in the mirror flashed into my thoughts like a thunder crack. I winced. There had been nothing there, I decided. Of course there had been nothing there. Nobody else had reacted, so there had been nothing there. An absent-minded hand came down to rub my knee through my tights. and for a moment, I was a little kid again. I could feel the living room carpet digging into my bare legs as I let my thoughts drift to that apartment, to my mother, to my father, and to that low-quality VHS recording, to the countless nights I spent caught in the dull glow of the television, dancing in the dark. Louisa came to collect me 15 minutes later, and as I stepped back into the rehearsal room, assuring her I was just fine, I saw that she had taped a wide blue circle onto the floor. "You traveled too far last time," Lamoureux said from his perch. I had Louisa mark the edges of the stage. It's shaped like a disc. You must stay within the circle, understand? Are you ready to try again? Yes, but I was just thinking. I mean, sitting out there, I know why I'm falling behind. I first saw this piece on television, the PBS recording, you know, hundreds of times, and the dancer only jumps once. During the climax, I mean, he only jumps once. I'm jumping 3 times, I explained. It throws off the next measure for me, so I'm behind the music, and then I rush. Louisa dropped her script on the floor, interrupting me and catching Lamoureux's attention. He looked back to me after a moment. "I remember that dancer from the recording," he said. "He was a last-minute replacement. He was not like you. He lacked stamina. He lacked strength. Could not do all 3 jumps and keep going, so we had to alter it. The cameras were already there, and the show must go on, yes? But you have the ability to perform the piece as conceived, Hector. It's why we chose you. 3 jumps. Forget what you know. Watching him, I felt something strange fluttering in my stomach. Maybe it was nausea. Maybe it was embarrassment at him trying to flatter me. But it was enough. I walked my circle of 3s, counted my toes, and straightened up. And looking at Louisa, I gave a nod. The music began. It was different this time, I thought. My whole body struck by a new momentum. I lurched to the left and then to the right, writhing downward, finding each moment, each breath, each precise movement. Lamoureux was not thumping, and while I only caught glimpses of him as I spun, something odd bubbled across his face. Excitement, maybe, or pleasure. And I had done it, I thought. I had danced before the master. And at last, I had done it well. Still, I found that I dared not look in the mirror. Not really. Dared not allow my eyes to focus too long on my reflection, lest I see the mover. Some part of me, even then, thought maybe it was still lurking there. I jumped. Once, twice, 3 times, extending my arms, my feet finding the floor as I plummeted down, sinking into the earth. I rolled, discovering that solid foundation again, finishing the dance with one final gasp as the music surged and ended in a cacophony. I had done it, panting, soaked, breathless. I looked up, then my limbs ablaze. I looked up, and there simply was no mirror. In its place, there was only an unbroken wall of black, an abyss. Something moved within it, though, dancing through the void, crunching, whirling, twisting, and thumping. I watched it now, watched the way it transfigured itself. It was almost divine. Some odd part of my brain thought, the way it moved, like nothing else had ever moved. Stunning, yes? Lamoureux said, coming up behind me as I knelt there. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Louisa joined him, and all three of us looked. Do not be afraid. It dwells there in the dark. No man in no place. Yes, always there, I think, just beyond what we can see, at least until we descend into it ourselves. He laughed. Do not look for the dead in the glass. You'll not like it. He squeezed my arm. The dance, exactly as devised. 3 jumps when not in public performance, thins the veils, allows us to see. A ritual, if you like. Are we artists, not magicians? And David danced before the Lord with all his might. Louisa and I have not seen in a long time. But I can no longer dance like you. What is it? I asked hoarsely. Do I know? A muse? It moves like the breath of the universe, walks the edge of it. An echo of what has always been. Maybe God. Reductive, but to filter even one part of it for mortal eyes, to be able to imitate some whisper of its aspect. Transcendent. Look, it's choreographing our next masterpiece. I don't understand. Inspiration chooses, Hector. It chose me. He ducked down to speak into my ear. I knew when you gushed about that videotape at your audition. Catharsis has never been recorded for broadcast. Why then did you and only you see it? How? To learn. My eyes widened. So be its filter, be its mirror, be sainted. I rose. I watched. My legs burned. Lamoureux had chosen me because it had chosen me. Yes, I thought. Yes, I wanted it. Me. Out of work, me. The filter. Chosen. I danced. Way. Terminal. Dread. 1. The announcement. The loudspeakers crackled to life, sending a sharp hiss of static through the cavernous, dimly lit terminal. The noise was jarring, a sudden intrusion in the uneasy silence that had settled over the travelers, who were slumped in their seats, fatigue etched deeply into their faces. The endless delays had worn them down, and now they were too exhausted to glance up. The air was thick with the stale scent of burnt coffee and damp, worn-out carpets. A suffocating blend that only added to the growing sense of unease. Then, the announcement came, each word clear, yet eerily mechanical, carrying a disquieting undertone. Attention, all passengers. Due to some unforeseen circumstances, all flights are cancelled indefinitely. Please remain in the terminal. Do not leave the airport. We apologize for the inconvenience. The voice was devoid of emotion, a cold, detached command that sent a ripple of unease through the crowd. Murmurs of frustration, tinged with fear, spread among the passengers, their voices rising and falling like the tide. Overhead, the departure boards flickered, the once orderly rows of destinations and times now spiraling into chaos as every flight switched from delayed to canceled. The fluorescent lights above seemed to dim in unison, their sporadic flickering casting long, jittery shadows across the floor. The terminal, once bustling with the energy of travel, now felt vast, cold, and hollow. A tomb of missed connections and lost hope to the unseen. Hours dragged on, though no one could tell whether it was hours or mere minutes. Time had lost its grip, slipping through the cracks like the insidious cold that seeped into the bones of those huddled in the terminal. People tried to make themselves comfortable, reclining awkwardly on the hard, unyielding plastic chairs, some curling up on the cold, unforgiving floor. Others wandered aimlessly, their eyes hollow, faces pale under the flickering lights. The airport staff, usually a constant presence, had vanished without a trace. The food courts stood empty, their colorful signs now dark, and the enticing smells of food had long faded. Even the ever-vigilant security personnel were nowhere to be found. The only sound was the low, relentless hum of the air conditioning. This dull drone draped the terminal in a blanket of oppressive silence. Occasionally, the rustle of a traveler shifting uncomfortably, or the faint tap of rain against the massive windows broke the quiet. Still, these sounds only served to amplify the growing sense of isolation. The terminal's once familiar noises had transformed into something alien and unsettling. A young woman, clutching a frayed boarding pass like a lifeline, approached the information desk, her footsteps echoing eerily in the empty space. "Excuse me?" she called out, her voice trembling as it reverberated off the walls, swallowed by the emptiness surrounding her. "Is anyone here? What's going on?" Her voice lingered in the air, unanswered, before fading into the void. She turned back towards the scattered passengers, her heart pounding. Then, something caught her eye, a fleeting movement in the glass's reflection, a quick and fluid shadow slipping away into the dim corridors leading to the gates. She spun around, eyes wide, but saw nothing. The same lifeless scene. Yet something had changed. The air felt thicker, heavier, charged with an unseen menace. It was as if the terminal itself was watching, waiting. Others began to sense it too. Paranoia spread like a contagion, infecting one passenger after another. Whispers grew in intensity as people shared their sightings. Dark shapes glimpsed from the corner of their eyes, only to vanish when looked at directly. A man, pale skin glistening with sweat, swore he saw a figure. No, something, standing in the shadows near the baggage claim, its eyes gleaming with a cold, malevolent light. His voice cracked as he recounted the encounter, his gaze darting nervously around the terminal, as if expecting the shadow to return. 3. The departure. The terminal descended into a deeper, more oppressive gloom as night fell. The few remaining lights flickered and buzzed, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural ways, their edges fraying as if they could reach out and ensnare the unwary. The temperature dropped, a biting chill creeping into the air, chilling the travelers. It was a cold that wasn't just physical. It carried the weight of something ancient and malevolent, something that didn't belong in the world of the living. A family huddled together near a gate, the mother clutching her children tightly, her eyes wide and wild as they darted around the room, watching the shadows with growing terror. A businessman, his suit now wrinkled and his tie askew, paced frantically near the exit doors, tugging at his tie as if it were strangling him. Others remained rooted to their seats, too afraid to move, their eyes heavy with exhaustion, yet wide open with fear. Sleep was not an option. The darkness held many unknowns and unseen threats. Then, a sound came from deep within the terminal. A low, rhythmic thudding. Distant at first, but growing steadily louder. It was the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps echoing through the deserted halls. But these weren't the footsteps of a person. They were too slow, too heavy, and each step seemed to reverberate with a dull finality, like the tolling of a death knell. Panic erupted. People screamed, bolting in all directions, their frantic movements chaotic and disoriented as they searched desperately for an escape. But the exits were sealed, the heavy glass doors locked tight, the windows impossibly thick, distorting the view outside into a surreal, shifting landscape that offered no hope of escape. The shadows were no longer content to linger at the edges. They moved with purpose now, fluid and sentient, slithering along the walls, creeping beneath doors, stretching across the floor like dark tendrils seeking out the terrified passengers. One by one, the travelers were claimed. The shadows reached out, ensnaring them, and pulling them into the darkness. Their screams echoed briefly, only to be abruptly cut off as the shadows engulfed them and dragged them into the abyss. Those who tried to hide found no sanctuary. The shadows seeped into every crack and crevice, relentless in their pursuit. The terminal became a hunting ground, the shadows of the predators and the passengers their prey. For the truth, the terminal was silent once more, save for the occasional crackle of the intercom and the distant, echoing thuds that marked the end of yet another life. The air was thick with the lingering scent of fear and despair, a miasma that clung to the walls, the floor, and the air itself. Then, as if in response to the bloodshed, the final announcement came, its tone eerily calm, almost soothing. This is a final boarding call for Flight 66. Passengers, please proceed to Gate D for immediate departure. A small group remained, huddled together, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and terror. They stared at each other with hollow eyes, their faces pale as the full horror of their situation sank in. The gate mentioned in the announcement was at the far end of the terminal, a place none had dared approach. It had always been shrouded in mystery, blocked off by barriers that hinted at endless construction, yet no progress was ever seen. Now, the barriers were gone, revealing a long, dimly lit corridor that led to a single gate. The gate loomed ominously at the end of the corridor, its door slightly ajar. A harsh, unnatural light spilled out from within, bathing the area in an eerie glow. The light was too bright, too white, too wrong. It wasn't the light of salvation or escape. It was the light of something far more sinister, a beacon drawing passengers into the unknown. Compelled by a force they couldn't resist, the survivors began to move toward the gate, their feet dragging as if weighed down by an invisible burden. The closer they got, the more they felt their very essence being pulled from them, their bodies dissolving into the shadows, their souls ripped from their forms and dragged into the eternal void that awaited beyond the gate. As the last of the passengers crossed the threshold, the terminal plunged into complete darkness, the oppressive silence broken only by the faint, lingering whispers of the lost. In the deserted control room, empty screens flickered with static, showing footage of an empty terminal, devoid of life, as if no one had ever been there. Now, a silent, empty shell. The airport waited patiently for the next group of unsuspecting travelers, ready to ensnare them in its endless, inescapable darkness. The intercom crackled one last time, then fell silent. Outside, the world continued, blissfully unaware of the horrors within the terminal. Inside, the shadows waited, patient and hungry, knowing that sooner or later, more victims would arrive, forever lost in the terminal's eternal "You're my rock." The bride and groom danced their first dance together, the room dark, the spotlight on them. Imogen Carlson tried and failed to grit her teeth. God, nothing was simple these days. Not even the simple acts of jealousy and resentment. How cruel this dance was to parade their beautiful normalcy for everyone to see. She glared. Her mother leaned over, but not too close, gosh no, and whispered into her ear, "Do try to smile, dear. You're positively green with envy. It is your cousin's wedding, after all. Couldn't you try to look happy for her? And do something about those straps, will you, dear? They're, slipping." She winced. Pun intended? But Imogen did as her mother requested. She was already on the fringes of society since her accident. She ought not to exacerbate things. Imogen sat upright straighter and forced a smile onto the thing the mirror insisted was her face. She then dug out the dress straps, which had started to dig into both shoulders. The married couple, hands clasped, faces inches apart, spun across the floor in sync. Now and then, they snuck a kiss, much to the delight of the onlookers, who cheered and whistled. The muscles beneath Imogen's eyes twitched. All she wanted was to stay at home and hide away in her room, behind the safety of closed curtains. Yes, lock herself away and await any news from the doctors and scientists. Of course, there was the possibility that they might never understand her issue or find a cure. Mum and Dad had said she couldn't isolate herself like a leper if that were the case. When she retorted that she was a leper, they'd only looked at her with wounded puppy dog eyes, and here they were, watching a couple do everyday things, like touching and kissing. She'd never experience these things again, unless she were okay with screams in response. The song wound to an end, and the crowd roared and applauded. The couple opened up the dance floor to friends and family, waving them over. The music changed from elegant to upbeat. Imogen's parents got up, hand in hand. Her father reached out for her, then stopped before he could hurt himself. "Would you like to?" he said, nodding towards the dancing mob. When he saw the slight shake of his wife's head, he answered himself, "No, I suppose you better not." Acidic bile stung the back of her throat. God, she wanted some cake. But she was afraid that people would watch her as she ate, horrified, but unable to look away. "Kill me now," she muttered under her breath. "Oh, if I did that, I wouldn't get to introduce you to Alan." Imogen jumped and yelped. It was Martin, the groom. He wore a tux and held a glass of white wine by the stem. he was smiling at her, a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, heart squelching in her chest. Imogen frowned. What was he here to do? Make fun of her? Pull a prank on her? She'd had enough of that from the local kids, who posted jelly packets through their letterbox. She supposed Mum had told her sister, who told her daughter and her groom-to-be. Not that they wouldn't have been able to see that something was wrong with her as soon as she showed up. During their first dance, the only light sources were the DJ's spotlight and Imogen's skin. "Who's Alan?" Martin's smile widened. He was tipsy. "An old school chum of mine. I thought you two would hit it off." Imogen's furrowed brow deepened. Martin had to be joking. And why on earth would anybody hit it off with someone like me? You can see me, right? Because you're looking positively radiant tonight, said Martin with a wink. Imogen stared at him. He faltered. Sorry, not funny. The corners of her lips twitched. She could see why her cousin liked this man. He was kind and genuine. It was a little funny, she conceded. He relaxed. Alan's a great guy, and he just arrived. He couldn't make it to the ceremony, otherwise you'd have definitely noticed him. There had to be a catch. Okay, well, what's wrong with him then? Martin nodded, as though he'd expected this. Alan had a little accident a few months back. He's been struggling with it. I thought the two of you might have a lot to talk about. Imogen winced. Man, she had a tongue of acid sometimes, like the rest of her. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... She shook her head. Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's meet the guy. Martin downed the last of his wine, set it on the table, and took a fresh glass from a passing waiter's tray. Great. Come, I'll introduce you to him. He's right over there. Now listen, he's a little sensitive about his looks, but... Martin stopped and looked at her, swaying. I don't think you'll judge him too harshly on that account. Imogen gasped when she saw him. Alan was sat alone in the far corner of the room, where the shadows swam, nursing a drink. He appeared to be a stone golem. Imogen, slurred Martin, gesturing back and forth. This is Alan I was telling you about. Alan, this is... Imogen stepped forward with a genuine smile for the first time in months. She cut Martin off. Imogen, she said. It's a pleasure to meet you, Alan. Alan groaned, eyes fixated on his drink, which the servers had served him in a metal beer stein. Yeah, sure it is. You've had your look at me now. I haven't finished having my look at you, Alan. Alan flinched, looked up, then gasped. Oh, he said. Oh, she answered. Martin laughed, his glass of wine half empty. All right. I'll pat myself on the back and leave you two to get to know each other. Have fun. She sat beside Alan, who could not take his eyes off her. She removed her polyester gloves to reveal her transparent, gooey green skin. car crash, 2 lorries, each carrying mutagenic agents, collided. Nobody was hurt, except for a certain Imogen Carlson. She was trapped in her Pinto when the chemicals combined to make something new. Now I can't touch organic materials without absorbing and dissolving them. Alan nodded. He'd ripped his suit where he'd tried to pull it on over his gravel surface. I was backpacking alone when I got the phone call that my mum had fallen down the stairs. I rushed home, taking a shortcut through the haunted mountains. I ignored all the warning signs telling you not to. I guess the mountains took it as an insult and cursed me to a life of cold stoniness. Mum's fine, by the way. Her heart ached for him. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. Must suck not being able to touch anyone. Doctors much help? She shook her head. Nope. They've no idea. Mine neither. They said they've never seen any rock like it, that it doesn't seem to be organic. She gaped at him. She looked from her green, gloopy hand to his rocky one. She looked at him, a question in her eyes. Alan took a minute to register the importance of what he'd said, eyes widening. And then he smiled and answered the question by taking her hand with his. He did not scream. There was no bubbling or sizzling. Imogen did not feel the strange sensation of eating via something other than her mouth. She'd experienced it before, and it wasn't pleasant. Wow, she said, unable to say more. Alan leaned closer. Would you like to dance, Imogen? She thought about it, then threw her anxieties to the wind. Yes, I would, Alan. On their way to the dance floor, Alan stepped on a man's foot, breaking it. Alan didn't notice the screams for an ambulance. She had his complete attention. On their way to the dance floor, Imogen brushed a woman's hair with her ungloved arm, eating the strands. She didn't notice the little shriek or the woman's death glare. He had her complete attention. Doctors have called it thingification, after the thing from Fantastic Four. My guys are calling mine blebitis, like in The Blob. I see you've also spent a lot of time hiding away indoors, glued to the screen. I have too. Guess we're not so alone now, huh? She nodded. Question. The Blob. Original from 1958 or the 1988 remake? Alan pondered as they started to dance, a wide circle of empty dance floor opening up around them. The original's got its charms, but for me, the remake takes the cake. Blasphemy. I know. Imogen couldn't help but smile. Those were her thoughts exactly. She leaned forward and kissed him on his stony lips. When I first saw you, my legs turned to jelly. Alan, grinning after the initial shock of the kiss, pulled her close so they were dancing skin to skin. And when I saw you, it warmed my cold stone heart. Imogen sighed and rested her head against his chest. What a wonderful wedding, sacrifice. This is an adult story, with language and content which may offend those easily offended. I can remember the sparkles, sunshine on water, at the river, that warm day in late spring. I remember the droplets on her skin, and I remember her eyes, her huge, childlike eyes, deep brown and clear and innocent, still unaware of her beauty, a child. Her perfect sun-kissed legs. I couldn't keep my eyes off her. I thought, how long do I have? How long will it take her to finish her drink, lips pouting round the rim? I didn't want it to end. A face like one of those perfect, golden, ratio faces that artists paint. Every single freckle was perfect, but she was real and was so beautiful it could have made me cry. And when she dived into the river, swam, ran on the bank, I watched her, and I wanted her. I have skills, talents. Everyone knows I can charm, manipulate, lead them where I want them to go. Call me a wolf, but all wolves aren't the same. There is one kind with an amenable disposition, tame and gentle, following the young girls in the streets into their homes. The young girls don't know that these gentle wolves, out of all the wolves, are the most dangerous. Yes, I have skills. I know these girls. They go for the bad boy, and I am the likeness of a devouring wolf, strong and mighty, with great, large eyes, which in the night sparkle like fire, and a wide mouth with most sharp and cruel teeth, a strong body. They want me. They want the dangerous man. All the girls are racing to be the first to bleed, first to kiss, first to touch, first to fuck. It's not that they especially want any of these things, but they are terrified of being different, of being left behind. Stay with the flock, keep in time. She, as much as the others, terrified of not being the perfect girl, the girl who speaks quietly and calmly, who is always kind and nice, never mean or bossy. She who wants to fit in, not lead or lag. So, yes, I could have had her, led her there, like any of the others. But this one was different. I had imagined, her and I, something real. I could have shown her things, many beautiful things, and excitement too. It was a dream, I know it could never happen. Eventually I'd change, and it would all go bad. The moon or the season would call me, and I'd hurt her, knowing I didn't want to. It's too hard when it comes, not something you can fight. It just happens. They know that, the ones who choose the girl to wear the hood. In the end, they all know that in the end, the bloodlust prevails. Yes, I'd eat that heart, panting hot and raw. Eat that sweet, dainty morsel. I don't know why they had to send her, why they had to send this girl. Any girl would have been okay. Any young girl. Fresh, you know. They knew. I think they knew my feelings for her. They must have known when they chose her. When they gave her the robe and the hood. Chose her as the virgin. And they knew when they sent her out. They knew she had to die like the others. Like every year. Did that make it better? Stronger? They for sure didn't think of me. Why would they? None of them ever cared about me. Here we are on the path. Her rich cascade of auburn hair tumbling out from her hood. She's skipping, smiling, with that basket full of wine. Some bring cakes, bake things. But she knew her grandmother, and her grandmother, old hag, crept away. She knew what was coming. She left the door unlocked and sneaked into the forest, kept herself safe. That's not as she'll tell it, but that's how it was. Her name doesn't matter now. She is the blood, the offering. They've dressed her in the robe, the hood. She's on the path. Everyone knows where this ends. Everyone but her. They will speak of her by her robe. She had a name, Diani, sweet, soft Diani. Diani, always with a smile, and so generous it was close to foolish. Her name meant dear, fitting perhaps, now. Now she is just the girl in the red hood. If she wasn't here, now, sometime later, she would have taken my hand and drawn it onto her breast, and it would have been sweet. In that cottage, on that bed, and she'd love the soft skin of my penis on her lips, and she'd smile when I shuddered as I came inside her, like a child given a gift. But this afternoon isn't going to end like that. I hate them for that. I want to call a pack and hunt them all down. They should fear me now. Those cruel men choosing her, making me do this, the worst thing, the worst part of this nightmare. What is destroying what soul I have left is I know she will taste good, good as she looks. I have always loved the way she looks. Pale skin, and that mass of dark hair tumbling out from her hood. Those child eyes. Too big, really. Those dark brown eyes. A beautiful child face on a woman. I want to look into them and for her to see me. The real me, you know? Not just the teeth. How long has this gone on? Thousands of years. I have read. Yes, I do read. I am educated. I have read the Greek. Pausanias knew the how and why. Told the story in which each year A virgin girl was offered to a malevolent spirit, offered as a sacrifice. And this spirit, dressed in the skin of a wolf, raped and ate the girl. They will tell another story, one that ends well. The girl will be rescued. Wishful thinking. A better story for their guilt. A happy fairy tale. Keep out of the woods. Don't speak to strangers. No one will mention Diani. They will agree, without words, not to mention her. They won't admit they chose the story. They chose the girl. I will be the malevolent spirit. Everyone believes there's a malevolent spirit. What does that mean, malevolent? I don't hate her. I do what they want. I do it for them. Someone has to. Someone always has. 1,000 girls, 1,000 innocent young girls, 1,000 virgins. So their crops will grow. So their gods will smile. I don the skin, the rank smelling skin, and pull the fangs into my mouth. It will haunt me. Next year, and the years after, all I will see is her eyes. I will see my teeth in her eyes. Watch her last moments, her confusion, and the rising fear. Her scream as I take her. Remember her hair tumbling from her hood. Remember the soft, sweet taste on my lips. As we stroll through the woods, the flowers mock me. They cover the peaceful, sun-dappled glades. Bluebells crowding round the base of the trees like flirting girls. Sweet-smelling columbine in the glades. The dog violet line her path. Bow as she walks to her sacrifice. Take your time, pick some flowers, I say. It's a lovely day. I know I'm going to do this. I know the flowers will cover the smell of your fear and your blood when I take you. Will help cover the stench when my teeth rip open your stomach. The gods will smile. They're bastard smiling gods. And the villagers, they all know it's happening. Duplicitous, lying, cruel bastards. They will cover it up again. They will tell their tales like they always do. But they know, they all know what big teeth I have and who I'm going to eat. One book. Wonder. New York City, 1955. Lonnie White pulled up his collar at a Fifth Avenue bookstore window against the cold. Black patches from lack of sleep lay under his eyes. Snowflakes, each an unkindly tiny angel to his mind, descended in the night. But it wasn't the crystals scurrying down his back that gave him the shudders, nor was it the ice melting in the hollow of his back. It was the overwhelming thought the snow crystals gathered together purposely of one mind, a sentient being. This is not possible, he told himself, but it feels all the same, like crystals of death prescient in their condemnation. He laughed at the poetic twist, coming out of his throat like a choking hack. The absurdity of his mind. The existence of hell is ridiculous. Well-dressed Manhattanites strolled by. Ankle-length dresses, pillbox hats, fedoras, and double-breasted suits. Lights flashed, and horns blared from hulking post-war automobiles, as if crying out to him alone, as if they knew him, were accusing him. Lost in thought, he stared, unblinking, at the best-selling novel on display, Scarlet Streets. A photo of the author, Julia Christensen, was poised on the back cover, a beautiful blonde. Her soft brown eyes radiated an undeniable sexual allure. If a passerby were to listen, which they never did, they might hear Lonnie mumbling at the window as they skirted around him. "A bestseller," he would announce quietly, shaking his head ever so slowly. A bestseller. A young man, Lonnie was as plain could be. He wore jeans under a green military jacket, though he had never been in the service. Neither handsome nor ugly, he was a man no one noticed. And yet, he preferred it that way. A ghost to the world. Anyone who bothered to look closely could see he was deranged in his loneliness. But no one bothered to look at all, much less closely. His only unique quality was that he lived alone in a 30-room Washington Heights castle, north of Manhattan. The medieval structure was inherited when his parents died. The trust paid the taxes and bills, providing him a stipend to live on. He had no family, no need for a job, no need for friends. Occasionally, like now, he would visit what he thought of as his storefront and think back to Julia, his one and only lover. "I loved her," he said to the glass. "I truly did. I'm not a bad person." They had met randomly when they had shared a park bench the previous summer. He had guessed she was an actress, and she had responded with a shy smile, as if he had guessed correctly. For some reason, he had mentioned Shakespeare was an actor and a writer. She, of course, had asked if he was a writer. He had admitted this was true, letting his ego lead the way, as men will do when impressing young women. But he felt he was not an authentic writer by any stretch. For this, he had to publish. He simply tapped away on his Smith Corona clipper within his castle tower, his garret, overlooking the Hudson River. Sweating, smoking endless, unfiltered Chesterfields, he pursued his great American novel from a place where his dire imaginings could flow. Julia's eyes had glowed a special admiring look, and he let the inner warmth of another human being bath him. Much to his surprise, they struck a friendship which began with meeting for coffee in the village and eventually moved on to lovemaking in her apartment. One thing he knew for sure was to never, never bring her to his castle. For then she would know he had risen no higher in life than an unemployed trust fund recipient, and was not a successful writer. This was wrong of him, he knew. But what could he do? This beautiful woman gave him the kind of attention he had never had. Is there any actual harm in letting her think better of me than you really are? Is it so bad to go out and embellish your wardrobe with fine suits to be the man you want to be? What if this is your only and last chance to feel a love and sexual embrace you had known only others to have? And so the deception went on, until Julia, as any curious woman would, wanted to see what Lonnie had written. The book he had been tinkering away at did exist in a high stack of typed-out white paper, cross-outs, and scribbles. Nobody had ever read it. The book was just the tapping on typewriter keys to burn his time. But as proof he was a writer, he gathered up the stacks of pages, 300 or more, and took them to Julia. He lay them before her as an offering, and so, as the days went on, he would sprawl on her apartment couch while she read through his novel, page by page, hour by hour. "Don't stare at me while I'm reading, silly," Julia would say, never offering her opinion. Each day, he returned panic-stricken to his castle, for his greatest hope, his desperate passion, was that Julia would like the novel. One word from her could save or crush any last vestiges of self-esteem remaining in his lonely life. He paced and paced into the night in his cavernous dining room, biting his nails. My God, what will she think of my novel? He thought. What if she doesn't like it, but she did like it? And more than just liking it, she had a friend who she thought could publish the work with the oldest publisher in New York, a specialist in suspense and murder. To Lonnie, this seemed beyond comprehension, beyond any imaginings of success he could think of or even dream. Yes, 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 he pleaded. Anything your friend can do, do. And so he released the pile of pages with Julia to take to her friend. In just 2 short weeks, Julia had word back from Bill. Could Lonnie meet her at her apartment? But it was only later, when she was across from Lonnie in a red leather booth, sipping her gin martini, fresh from their lovemaking, a pink glow glistening on her cheeks, that she said, "I have some news about your book." Lonnie was speechless. He stared, transfixed on her siren's face, her blonde hair cascading in Lonnie's imagination, just the hint of a rise and fall of her breasts under her white blouse. "The manuscript is accepted for publication," she said. This was beyond happiness for Lonnie to hear. The novel, and only from Julia's connections, would become a success. Life was truly grand. But there is one thing, Julia said, her delicate nails holding a martini glass. Bill says the marketing of the book is crucial. He won't back it unless we have the right, how did he put it? Image. That's it. The right image. Julia laid out the requirements. The author needs to be a woman. Me, actually. You have to understand how important this is. Bill says books sell with sexy authors. And you, Lonnie, well, as much as I love you, do you want the book to be successful? It could make a lot of money. At first, Lonnie thought, no way will I let my book go to a publishing house unless under my name. But then he also thought about what he would walk away from. Lonnie was simply a hobbyist writer. Sure, now that he knew a publisher was interested, he could send it out to multiple publishers and maybe find someone else. But with Julia as the author, he had something else. He had Julia. He had the last and only pleasure he would ever find in a woman. A woman who would likely be offended if he didn't do things her way. A woman who he didn't want to risk losing. It was decided. Julia Christensen would be the author, Lonnie the ghostwriter. Do you think it would be a good idea to send it out to other publishers? Lonnie asked. Julia bristled, her eyes staring down. Maybe, if you don't trust me. This, of course, settled it. The book came to market, and at first went nowhere, but slowly gained traction as a sleeper with a growing readership. A tragic murder mystery with a twist. Heart-rending, the New York Post book summaries said. And so, in 6 months, the book climbed into the bestsellers and became, by all appearances, a blockbuster. At least it was successful from Lonnie's view, reading the trades and watching Julia Christensen on the talk shows. The book is a hit. A tremendous hit, Julia said, after dragging her upper teeth against her lower lip. Lonnie stared, mesmerized. They were perched on Julia's new kitchen island. She had explained she needed a nicer apartment in case news people were to follow her home. Image, she explained, was everything. Lonnie fidgeted in his chair. It seems like we should get an advance or something. Julia flipped her right hand as if swiping a bothersome mosquito. All the money went to marketing, dear. Lonnie took in the marble kitchen island, the lavish oriental rugs, the view of Manhattan. Hesitating like she had remembered something, Julia said, "You'll see. The truth is, I wouldn't even have taken this apartment if Bill hadn't insisted. I've never met Bill. Soon, honey, soon. You'll like him." Within a few months, Lonnie was leaving messages for Julia, and she wasn't calling back. What could be wrong? True, it might offend her, but he decided to stop by. How else could he see her, set things right? He knew she was busy, but this was only fair. A man Lonnie had never met answered the apartment door. "My good man, you must be Lonnie," he said. Lonnie could smell greasy hair tonic. The man was lanky, tall, and Lonnie had never seen a human being whose eyes smiled less. Julia? Lonnie! Wearing a white robe, loose enough for Lonnie to realize this was all she wore, Julia leaned through the doorway of the kitchen. I would have called you. Finally, you meet Bill. Bill? Introduce yourself. But Bill didn't have time as Lonnie swept past him to Julia, who was poking cubes of raw steak and vegetables with a skewer, chopped potatoes, onions, a cucumber. Something rose up in Lonnie, an anger in his chest that grabbed his heart, prevented him from taking a breath as he choked down a venomous, dark taste. Julia could see the anguish in Lonnie's eyes, the naive awareness widening in a little boy's innocence. What? You think I'd tie up with a loser? A one-book wonder. You've got nothing, Lonnie. Not even your book. Now get lost. But we stole it, Lonnie. Your book, yes, but more than that, we stole your creative energy, your mind. It wasn't the words she said that ripped through Lonnie's mind. No. It was recognizing the flush on Julia's face that Lonnie so cherished that set him off, causing him to lose himself in an inner roar rising into the front of his brain. A blinding white. Lonnie grabbed the shish kebab skewer and held the back of Julia's head by grabbing her hair with his left hand. He plunged the steel point into Julia's right eye, then slowly thrust the length forward, his head slightly tilting in curiosity at the ease of the pointed steel scrunching through to the rear of her skull. She screamed and fell, with her hands gripping her face. Lonnie yanked out the skewer, and he was no longer slow or curious. He punched the steel again and again into her chest, blood splattering on her white robe. With each thrust, he felt the emptiness of his life, the never having the authentic love of even one woman. It was so ruthlessly unfair. He ignored Bill as he turned to leave. Bill, near catatonic, remained riveted on Julia's crumpled body. Within weeks, Lonnie picked up the New York Post. A sordid murder affair was splashed on the front page. Author Christensen, murder solved. Kennedy gets the chair. The story described a Mr. William Kennedy who pimped for this lady of the evening, Julia Christensen, until she hit it big with her book. The whore who wrote a bestseller, the article said. Just a pimp and his whore, it turned out. A common story on the streets of New York. Lonnie continued to live in his drafty Washington Heights monstrosity. Sure, he had committed a murder, he thought, but fully justified, pushed beyond his limit, and betrayed on so many levels. Who wouldn't? He often found himself on Fifth Avenue, at the window of his bookstore, as the winter diminished, spring ended, and summer began. in the window, scarlet streets taunted him. The book bragged to him how it was an even greater smash since the prostitute author was murdered. Lonnie paced his castle tower well into the night. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He now knew he had written a bestseller, but he couldn't claim it. He also had writer's block, but knew why. Julia had taken his creative mind and died with it, stolen it, as she had said. She had taken who he was somehow, his talent. But no worries. He knew how to get his creativity back. This only made sense. He grinned to himself. That's it? What greater power than talent? And I'll have plenty. The woman lying in front of Lonnie had published not one, but 4 novels. He had followed her down the dark streets of Brooklyn. And it wasn't difficult, with a little chloroform, to get her back to his castle. She was now tucked safely away within the basement crypt. His parents' bodies lay resting near her in the gray stones, their mouths aghast, eyes open. They lay in graves covered with a clear, glass-like resin. Tossing notepaper to the girl, he demanded she write. Later, he would take the notes to his garret tower and plink away on his Smith Corona. Plink, plink, plink. But this wasn't enough. Only by piercing his eyes into the depth of her creative mind, fusing his eyes with hers in an inexorable transformation, could the process work. He strapped her down on her back and lay prone against the top of her, her soft warmth compressed against him. He sensed her terror. "Don't blink," he begged, digging into her pupils with his own. "The windows are your soul," he pleaded. "I must meet you at exactly the right moment, the moment your eyes go dead." He tightened his hands ever so slowly on her throat, saving the moment, perfecting, staring. As the girl's eyes died, he could feel her talent moving to his own mind exquisitely. The tiny angels of a sentient being joined him, the ice crystals, the snow. Once completed, he could feel his creativity soaring. He couldn't wait to go to his garret, couldn't wait to join his Smith Corona. But first, some business. This was only Wout, a respect. He honored her with her own place and lay her carefully, lovingly, he felt, in an open grave, the row his parents lay in. Covering her with clear resin, she formed a sanctuary of her own, her face aghast, mouth open, eyes seemingly aware. But even while doing so, he tried not to dwell on the acid in his stomach. The burst of talent she'd given him would play out. When the time came, he knew there was only one way to refill his creativity. The snow talked to him, beckoned him on. The crystal angels.